for me, the trauma affected me as well, but differently from each other. For me, the sleep was a huge factor. Lack of sleep, that is,
Mhm.
not being able to fall asleep, replaying events in your head like over and over,
intrusive thoughts.
intrusive thoughts, dwelling on the events that happened, around Charlotte's death, and that's just that went on for many months with those intrusive thoughts. For me, more specifically, I was able to be functional when that was happening.
Mhm.
So I could get through, like if I was going to work, I could go to work and get through work. And I would come home and then I'd be talking to Jojo afterwards and saying, I was in this meeting, people are talking about this, that, or whatever. And I'm replaying the events of my daughter's death in my head, and nobody knows because everyone thinks I'm fine because I'm keeping it together. So at least physically, I'm keeping it all together. But I'm thinking these horrible thoughts going through my head of my daughter's death, and nobody has a clue. And I would share that with her, and it was like crazy to think and that went on for many months. Something I worked on, in learning to understand, grief better and the process of grieving to a point where I was able to started to intentionally seek out the thoughts. And I guess that's something that I learned that I understand in truth of thoughts is clearly my mind wanted to go there. It wanted to deal with this. And I didn't want it to do it. And so hence the intrusion.
During a meeting.
Like my subconscious, I needed to deal with this. And consciously, I didn't want to. And that's why it was intrusive. And and it took months for me to recognize that's why it's happening. Maybe I need to do some really hard work and let my thoughts go where I don't want them to go. And only by doing that, and that was not easy at all, but the intrusive thought stopped after that and has never come back since.
Yeah.
I mean, it will, you never forget. You never, those thoughts never go away of what happened in the details. But I feel in better control now of that. If something triggers to make me think of that, I feel like I'm in better control that I can say, okay, now's not the time. Maybe there is something else that I need to think about, but I can schedule time. I can control when and how I deal with it. It's not just being like hit by the wave, like whether you want to or not, you're just going to get hit. Yeah. When our emotions, our grief evolves to, with time, and it's not easy. It's really hard to understand and deal with grief and to know what's the right thing to do. Am I doing it wrong or am I doing it right? I don't know. Everybody's different. There's no manual you can go to. That's and me being an engineer, I'm an engineer. I like
order,
and plan things and execute to the plan, and it doesn't work like that. And that's hard. That's hard for me personally because of the way I'm wired. I'm a very analytical person. I like to problem solve, and grief is not a problem that you can solve. You just can't. And that's difficult for someone like me, like an engineer, to grapple with. That there's something that's massively wrong. My daughter is dead, and I can't fix it.
But I think that speaks to, I think moms obviously feel this as well, but dads, like, you're supposed to be the one that goes in and fixes and saves the day. How do you as a dad navigate carrying that responsibility And also, like, you're talking about going to work and still having to do that. Can you speak to dads specifically?
I'll share some of my personal, experience. Early after Charlotte died, I went back to work within, I don't know, how long was it?
Couple weeks.
2-3 weeks. I went back to work after Charlotte's death, and it was my own decision. Fortunately, the company I work for put no pressure on me, and they said, take as much time as you need. And I'm grateful that they didn't, that they allowed me that, but it was my own choice. And I went back to work because I felt I couldn't just sit at home. I needed to do something. That was just and then, her JoJo was different. Like she wanted to be at home. And that was something that we both recognized in each other and allowed that, okay, I'm going to go off to work. She's going to stay at home. That's okay. We're both doing what we feel like we need to do at the time. But for me, going back to work, the hardest thing was the people there, because they didn't know how to talk to me. I didn't know how to talk to them. And here I am going back into a work environment. I'm like, okay, I'm here to work. And then people come talk to you, and it's like, wait a minute. If I start talking about, that I'm not working, and now my headspace is all, and that was very challenging just from the people dynamic standpoint of how, and it took many weeks to kind of get through that. And then of course it's like initially it's like, I felt like everybody wanted to come, like they felt like they needed to come say something to me. Which is good. I appreciate that, that people want to acknowledge, my loss, but there's a time and place to do it. And when I'm there to work, I'm thinking now's not the time. I don't want to be bombarded with all of these people who feel like they talk to me, because then I'm just going to be a mess, emotionally. And, and that was hard, but also, the managing other people's feelings, the way I'm wired, I keep, physically, I keep it under control, even though things may be a mess inside, but physically I keep it under control. So I maintain my functionality, but someone will want to come, talk to me, about it. And then they end up breaking down and crying. And then I find myself comforting them. I'm like, what am I doing? And then that takes an emotional toll out of that. And then that keeps repeating over and over again. It's draining. But that was short term until we kind of, people are, all right, they said something to me. Now we're back to, to working. And I think one of the things that was helpful for me once I got to that point was, to me, going to work was a bit of an escape. I could go and focus on just work stuff. And I felt productive. I felt functional. I felt like I'm useful. Yeah, that motivated me, kept me going. Unfortunately, with time, what I also realized too was that the friendships, relationships with people at work were changing too, because I found myself in that mindset where I'm just here to work and I'm just Mr. Professional. And the personal relationships just went to the side, and so years go by, and then you realize I've lost my connections. I work with people every day, but it's 100% professional, and I lose. And then with time, you start to realize, what have I lost? I understand why I'm doing what I need to do to protect myself, but you don't realize, for me at least, I didn't realize what I was doing until, I'm losing that. And still it's, we're, what is it? 8 years now. And, I'm still very much like that. Work is work. And,
Have you been able to find connections and relationships in places besides work where they can be totally segregated and you have a safe space, or is that still something that's a challenge?
it's still a challenge because I would say I do have some good friends that I feel like I can really talk to about anything, which is wonderful. So if Charlotte comes up, it just feels comfortable, to talk about things that would make someone else very uncomfortable. And I think that's more about with relationships is I may be feeling comfortable. Like I don't mind talking about Charlotte. I'm good with that. I like to share memories and thoughts of Charlotte, but then I hold back because I don't know how the other person is going to react, and how they're going to behave. And so you really have to have that level of trust in a relationship to know that the way the other person is going to respond is going to be in a positive way and not a negative way.